My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
The Elder Wand, the Resurrection Stone, the Cloak of Invisibility. Together they make the Deathly Hallows. Together they make one Master of Death. The last will and testament of Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore.
Do not pity the dead, Harry. Pity the living. And above all those who live without love.
Hey everyone, welcome to Hogwarts, a podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Hogwarts, a podcast. We are covering Chapter 22, The Deathly Hallows, which is odd because you felt like we just had an episode on the Deathly Hallows, but we're going to talk about them some more, apparently. Jen is with us.
Hey guys.
So we just had the chapter on the Tale of the Three Brothers, which identifies what the Deathly Hallows are. And we get another chapter where the trio essentially talks and debates and goes over them again. So we will talk and debate and go over them again. And we do have a couple of shout-outs to get to before we get into the chapter. And the first shout-out, very quick, very simple, from Willa on Sorcerer's Stone Chapter 1. I'm a Hufflepuff, yo. Awesome. I feel like most of these comments that we get from Sorcerer's Stone Chapter 1, more than any other house, it's Hufflepuff. The Hufflepuffs are very proud to declare themselves Hufflepuffs.
They should be. It's a cool house.
I can't remember the last time we had I'm a Slytherin, I'm a Ravenclaw, I'm a Gryffindor. Granted, if you go to the poll, the vast majority of the people voting on that poll seem to be Gryffindors, yet they don't seem to proclaim it as much. So, who knew? The next comment is from Mabel, from Deathly Hallows Chapter 19, The Silver Doe. And Mabel says, I also believe Harry didn't ask the question, because if he didn't get the response he wanted, that it's from his mom, somehow, he would remember how alone he actually is, and his mom isn't by his side. I believe he wanted to stay with that idea of his mom still being near. That's in reference to the question that I posed of, he thought of a question, it was burning inside him, and then the dough disappeared, and he never actually got to ask the question. So my thought was, well, the question is, are you my mom? Are you Lily? I think Mabel makes a good point of like, oh, maybe he didn't want the answer to that question and thus didn't end up actually vocalizing the question. What do you think?
I think that fits very well. I like that sentiment.
Our next comment is from AV, who left a comment on Chapter 20 of Deathly Hallows, Xenophilius Lovegood. AV says, Hi! Here's a theory for where Luna got the horn from. It's not as interesting as yours, but I would say a swindler sold it to him. Instead of paying to have it disposed of, he'll make money off of it by selling it to this guy. If we're being real, it's probably true. It's probably some guy trying to scam Lovegood because he knows it's Xenophilius Lovegood.
I was going to say, do you think he has the reputation of, here's this guy who will...
Little conspiracy theorist and taking advantage?
Yeah.
Probably. I think he might be an easy mark.
That's fair.
But I do really like the idea of a Death Eater trying to do an assassination attempt on Xenophilius by somehow acquiring the Erumpent Horn and then trying to pass it off. But regardless, any theory is a good theory. AV's probably actually right, but that's all right.
That's what the Death Eaters do when they're not getting direct orders from Voldemort.
Yeah, they're taking trips to, like...
You gotta pass the time.
Yeah, you gotta take trips to Africa, risk your life.
Yeah.
Try to kill this oddball magazine editor, Why not? Our last comment comes from someone we both know very, very well.
Who could it be?
It's Elizabeth. Elizabeth forgot to mention something on the last couple of episodes. So she went back and she commented on Deathly Hallows Chapter 19, The Silver Doe, and Elizabeth said that Ron may have had less traumas than Harry, but I don't think the locket is preying on traumatic experiences. I think the locket feeds on jealousy, which Ron does have the largest supply of. It makes sense it affects him the most.
I always read it in a similar way. I'm not sure that it's a jealousy specific thing. More so just, I think Ron is the least secure of the three. So it found what it could use against him. And in that case, it's preying on whatever Ron's underlying fear of Harry and Hermione's relationship is. But I think it was easiest for it to do because Ron is insecure. So, like, I agree with what Elizabeth is saying. I guess I'm just putting the caveat on.
So you do think, like, the locket does appropriately affect Ron the most?
Yes.
Okay. I agree. I think it's a more general sense of, I think the locket targets any negative thoughts wherever they may come from. So if the largest pool of that for Ron happens to be jealousy, that's fine.
Yes.
But I think it just targets any kind of negative emotion and feeds on that and was like, oh, this bothers him. Great, let's pump his brain and heart and mind full of all of these negative things.
Yes, I think it's just, it amplifies whatever you've got going on.
Obviously, we know what Harry's thoughts and feelings are on it, and now we know what Ron's thoughts and feelings are when he wears a locket, but we still have not really gotten a good idea of what Hermione feels and sees when she wears the locket, which is always an interesting topic for debate.
Yes. Well, that was, I don't want to sidetrack this too much, but that was the topic that played a role in, there's a fan fiction that I read a year or two ago, and it was instead of the locket, there's a different horcrux that Hermione ends up using, and it was, I think, very well written in terms of what it was, her insecurities, and how it was playing off of her insecurities.
So it was a fan fiction written from her point of view then?
Yeah.
Interesting. So what was the feelings that Hermione had in this fan fiction?
Her feelings were just inadequacy in the sense of she felt like she was lacking because she didn't have answers.
Interesting. Okay.
Which
Similar to Harry's.
Yeah. But plays into the whole Hermione has to have being very book smart, being very know-it-all-esque, playing off of the fact that they're in this tent, that they don't know what's going on, that they don't have a clear direction, and that's what it was amplifying.
We've talked about how it could have been like an evolution from, McGonagall's going to fail me in this transfiguration exam to I'm going to fail and now my friends will die. Yes. Like an evolution of her initial more childlike fears, and now she has more adult fears of, this has real consequences. For sure. All right, so we get this chapter, The Deathly Hallows. And obviously this picks up right where we left off, which is the escape from Xenophilius Lovegoods. They land in a field and immediately start setting up their normal protections. And Hermione reveals that she wanted the Death Eaters to see Harry before they disapparated because she doesn't want anything very, very bad to happen to Lovegood. And Ron and Harry immediately praise Hermione's quick thinking.
There's some very fast thinking by Hermione.
Fast, quick.
Strategic.
There's a lot of moving parts there, like to cover Ron in the cloak because of his issues that he can't be seen because he's supposed to be in the burrow sick. And, we don't want Xenophilius to die, so let's make sure we're at least setting him up well. I'm already on the run, so it doesn't matter for me. So there's a lot of quick pieces that she put together.
This whole book, she's been very, very much 2 or 3 steps ahead at each point in time. So she's been very on top of the strategy for how do I get out of this situation quickly. She's
been incredible early on. She's made a couple of mistakes here and there. She'll say that it was her mistake to even go to the Lovegoods. Hey, that was my bad. And Harry's like, that's all right. I picked Godric's Hollow, you picked the Lovegoods. Hey, we're even now on maybe not so great ideas, but you can get to that a little later. But yeah, Hermione's been clutch. They do get to contemplating Luna's whereabouts. They obviously go to a very dark place, and they're like, is she even alive? Do we know that she's alive? Questionable, considering the type of people that we're up against. And they do land on, most likely, she's in Azkaban. And if she's in Azkaban, I feel like this is where it diverts into the realm of Molly. If you've listened to our episodes and you're familiar with Molly's takes on everything, maybe Luna's just telling other inmates and the Dementors about, Crumplehorn Snorkax and, all of these weird little things that the Lovegoods kind of believe in. I like that headcanon, which is actual canon because they actually said this in the book. I love that they made it real because this was wholeheartedly my headcanon of if Luna is or ever were to be in Azkaban, her just trying to teach the Dementors about something just stupid ridiculous would be awesome. Like I just said, Hermione does regret going and said it was Godric's Hollow all over again. The fact that they went to these places and it didn't go well, okay. But I still think both locations gave them a lot. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Xenophilius gave them a lot of background on the Deathly Hallows, whether they choose to believe in it or not, we'll get to in a second. But Godric's Hollow gave Harry a lot of peace of mind with his family, seeing, the place where he kicked off everything. The gravestones were important to see. The house was important to see. The statue of him in the center of the square is important for him to see. And they figured out that Nagini was there.
Yeah.
So, all important pieces might not have gone the way they would have liked. But I don't know. I thought they were worthy risks.
No, I think that's fair. I think Godric's Hollow was really important for Harry to get some level of closure. And I thought that was a very strong... I think it was reasonable of them to think we should go there and see what's around, because we know that Voldemort likes to go to places of significance. Obviously, Godric's Hollow was significant. It was a good guess. I can see where following the Lovegoods was maybe less of a good idea, but they do get a lot of information, like you said, whether or not all of them believe it to be useful. But we, as readers, can appreciate it.
I think everybody loves the Tale of the Three Brothers, whether it's...
It's a really cool story. It was the best part of the film. And I don't dislike the films. I just thought it was amazing.
Yeah.
And it's a really cool symbol.
Well, the trio does debate the Deathly Hallows once again. And I won't go over the whole debate, the back and forth. But obviously Hermione is very anti-Hallows, and Ron and Harry are more willing to accept the possibility that they are real. Ron does make a good argument, though. I will say this. He brings up the Chamber of Secrets and is like, hey, look, Chamber of Secrets was a myth. Turned out to be real.
It's surprising to me in this chapter how ardent Hermione is that the Hallows don't exist.
Well, what do you think about So, when we meet Xenophilius Lovegood and he gets into this back and forth with Hermione, he calls her narrow-minded, closed-minded, limited. Mm-hmm. This is the second time she's been challenged. Once by Trelawney, and once by Xenophilius Lovegood. Both Ravenclaws. Just pointing that out there again.
Yes.
But it's interesting that two Ravenclaws would call her out on being like, well, why can't this be possible? Can you prove that it's not possible? Well, no. Well, then why isn't it possible?
I understand Hermione's reluctant. I think Hermione is just someone who's much more comfortable dealing with absolute concrete facts. And I think that there have been enough times throughout the series where she has been the voice of reason that it's reinforced to her that you can only operate on fact. So I understand from her perspective how she's getting here. It's just unfortunate because there have also been some pretty big, like what Ron is saying, counterpoints to that of Chamber of Secrets was a myth. There are a lot, I'm sure when she was a kid, the wizarding world was a myth, right? There's a lot of moments here where maybe she should be taking a step back and just not outright dismissing legends or hearsays or myths or whatever. So it is how Hermione operates, and she has reason to operate that way, but she is being narrow-minded in this scenario.
I think Ron and Harry are bringing up some really pointed, logical points to counter her, which I think also takes her a little off guard. It was like, oh, wait a second, we're like actually taking this seriously. Okay.
And she doesn't have good arguments against it. She doesn't have good rebuttals.
Yeah. A lot of her rebuttals are just like, come on, really?
Right. And that's not a good rebuttal.
No. She keeps backing off of the Elder Wand, and she'll back off of the invisibility cloak because there's more evidence to suggest that those two things might exist. But her sticking point is the Resurrection Stone, and then her logic becomes, well, if the Resurrection Stone definitely can't exist, then the other two can't exist.
That's not how logic works. Like, that is not, you just can't argue like that.
Correct. I completely agree. And Harry actually comes up with a pretty good point against the Resurrection Stone. And the point he makes is on Priory Incantatem from the graveyard in Goblet of Fire. He's like, hey, look, when the wands connected, I saw Cedric Diggory. I saw my parents. They interacted with me. They spoke to me. There's reason to believe that magic like that can exist. And it's an argument that I don't think Hermione can actually counter very well.
No.
She does become scared of his talk about talking with the dead.
Which is kind of an odd reaction, I think, from her. I'm not sure where that fear comes from. I mean, he's not saying that that's something he wants to do. He's just trying to counter her argument.
I think it comes from him claiming he wanted the Resurrection Stone. So now he's already put a claim on the Resurrection Stone, and now he's talking about the desire to speak with the dead and the possibility of that. And it's like, Harry.
Getting some side-eye from Hermione there.
Yeah.
I think it's also interesting because Harry's argument for Priory Incantatem is a similar thing that we've seen with the invisibility cloaks. So that magic does exist. But typically, I think Ron talks about this in, is it the first book? Where he says that typically it wears off after a while. So people can duplicate that magic, it's just not long-lasting because it's not the original. Harry has reason to think that his is the original because it feels different, acts different, all of those things. So it's possible to mimic this magic and still not have it be exact. Because I think Hermione's argument in this case is that, well, that's not the exact magic.
Yeah.
But it's close enough.
But I think that's what Harry's getting at, too, is like, well, the Resurrection Stone doesn't bring back people from the dead. That's the whole point of the story.
Right, that's the other side of it.
It's like, and I want to get your 2 cents on this wording, too, with it.
Ooh, okay.
It's the person is brought back, but they're prevented from being fully back by something that's similar to, like, a veil. Mm-hmm. Veil is the word that I want to get your 2 cents on.
It's an interesting use of the word veil.
It's an interesting word, considering we also know of a veil connected to death.
Yes.
And I want to get your 2 cents on that. But, yeah, he kind of brings up that little back and forth of like, well, no, that's not what the Resurrection Stone does. It brings up a faked version of bringing you back from the death. That's not a legit way.
Right.
They're not fully back. So how is that really all that different from Priory Incantatem and some other things? So let's get your thoughts on the tale of the three brothers and the thing I just mentioned, the little hint drop of veil. We'll get your 2 cents on what that could mean in relation to the Department of Mysteries. And obviously, which Hallow would you choose?
So I really like the use of the word veil with this. I think that's one thing that we've seen consistently across all of the books is that J.K. is very good at recurring themes, references, Easter eggs, foreshadowing, callbacks. She's very good at weaving things throughout the books. So I like the parallel to the archway in the Department of Mysteries that we saw Sirius go through the veil. There's definitely this continued theme now of this veil separating living and dead, which I think is neat. I also like the reinforcement that you really can't, it's one way. You really can't come back. Which I also think is fairly good from like a world building perspective too, because too many times, I think a lot of shows will cheapen the plot by bringing people back from the dead.
Sure.
So she's very consistent with that.
I tell you, Julie is not liking what she's hearing from you right now.
That's fair. I really hate to break it to Julie, but I don't think Sirius is coming back. No, and then in terms of the Hallows, I was kind of laughing to myself earlier because, so you were saying that you think that you would prefer the Elder Wand because it's in your personality and demeanor that you would be able to handle it well.
Yeah, I think I can get the better effects from it without some of the negative side effects, at least the ones that are mentioned in the story.
Okay. I think that so I feel the exact opposite about the Resurrection Stone. I feel like, knowing myself, that is the last thing that anyone should be giving me.
Okay.
Because I think I'm a very nostalgic, emotional person.
Okay.
And I don't think that I would be able to use it well.
Fair enough. I can see that.
Yeah. So in terms of Hallows that I would actually want, I would want the invisibility cloak. I just don't really care about the wand.
Okay. What do you think you'd utilize the cloak for?
My joke answer was just going to be eavesdropping. My serious answer is more so like just for safety, just for being able to go out and
that's fair.
Not have to worry about
getting like mugged in an alley or something like that.
Something like that.
You're a big traveler, so like going abroad, maybe in a more unsafe location.
Yeah, in, maybe countries that aren't as safe.
That's fair.
For women, I would love to have an invisibility cloak to still go out and do stuff, or go out late at night by myself and not have to worry about.
That's a good answer.
So
solid answer. I know I say like, oh, I'd be able to use the wand with its intended better effects and not its intended negative effects. I think the other part of this tale is, and the danger with let me be very clear about that, any of the three Hallows, I think a lot of people go in with the intention of, I will utilize this for good.
Yes.
And I think Death's purpose on all of these is there's still probably a drawback somewhere in there. Like, there's going to be a catch. So even if you think you're going in, with the best intentions, well, you start using the wand, you're like, wait, I can do this? Oh, great. Oh, I can do this? And then you start pushing your boundaries too much. And with the stone, obviously, you might have the best intentions. Like, you want to talk to a lost loved one for, 10 seconds even, just to be like, hey, I miss you, or something like that. And it's very easy to get addicted to that presence. Like, those first 10 seconds can go great, and it's perfect, and it's exactly how it's intended, and then all of a sudden it drags, and it drags, and it drags, and then you get the story.
Do you think, though, that there is... It feels like there's a selfless way to use the wand, and it feels like there's a selfless way to use the cloak. But I don't... What is the selfless way to use the stone?
Selfless?
Yes.
I don't know. There is no selfless way to use the stone. However, being selfish is not all the time the worst. It's okay to be selfish sometimes. Sometimes you have to be. That's not necessarily inherently a bad thing.
Okay.
It's just, there are limits. Like, hey, I could be like, my friends want to hang out with me on, a Saturday night. And you could just be like, you know what? I need a Saturday night to myself. I need to be selfish for me. I need to take a night to myself. That's okay. If you need that time, that's okay. If you start shutting out your friends week after week after week, yeah, there might be consequences to that. Yeah. So, I mean, selfish is okay to a point. Mm-hmm. And I think with this, that idea of you're going through something, let's say you lost your father, and you just really need your father's advice, or you just need your father just to say something to you. And you get that 10, 30 seconds, maybe even a minute or two, or whatever. I don't know what that limit would be, where it's like, hey, this is dragging on, they're not supposed to be here. They start getting a little distant, let's say. Obviously we have the story and what happens there. I don't know what that time limit is. That person intended to spend their entire rest of their lives with that figment of an individual unhealthy. So, I don't know what that time limit is.
Yeah.
I would hope to use it for, like, hey, I just needed to see you for a couple of seconds to say I miss you. And then wrap that up. And then, does that accumulate over time? Can you do that, like, 5 seconds a time over, like, 30 years? Does that accumulate and give you the same effect? I don't know. You know what I mean?
That's a good point. I guess.
Like if you keep bringing the same person back, like, every year.
That'd be really funny. I guess it's interesting because in my mind, there's just no upside to that. I don't see an upside to the resurrection stone.
It's not a long-term upside. Ideally, it's not a long-term upside.
I don't see how it could be. Like, I don't see how there's any long-term benefit. It just feels like when you said addiction, that's what it feels like to me. Where it's like
I can see that.
You are never going to feel fulfilled, in my opinion, using the resurrection stone.
Yeah, I think the wand and the stone by far have the most addictive tendencies that can get you in a lot of trouble in a very quick amount of time.
Yeah.
Some people might ask, well, what's the negative side of the cloak? Because obviously via the story, there isn't one. It's the one that Death didn't want to give up.
Yeah.
So what could be the downside of the cloak? You're invisible. You're perfectly, fully invisible. There are some nefarious things you can get into with the cloak that you'd be tempted to. Xenophilius mentions you can get rich beyond your wildest dreams. I don't think he was meaning by selling this cloak. I'm like you could probably do some high-level magic tricks with this thing. You can do obviously you can steal some stuff very easily with this cloak, and you can get into some other stuff that we won't get into on this podcast, but you can get into some stuff that's not appropriate. So there are downsides to the cloak because you can get addicted to that too. And if you're like, hey, if no one can see me, I can do this, or I can get away with X, Y, or Z, and that becomes addictive, and then you're getting in trouble. So
that's fair.
You literally lose yourself, not just visually, but like you lose your humanity, your personality a little bit. At least that's how I'm going to put the negative on the cloak.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. I think that makes sense.
Because I think that's what everybody thinks about is like, oh, the wand and the stone, that's easy to poke holes in because very obvious side effects. But the cloak, it's harder. But anyway, that's my 2 cents on it.
No, I think you're right. I think the cloak is the most complex of the three.
Hermione does note that the Peveril name has since died out. So the male line of the name has since been extinguished. That does not mean, however, that the descendants have stopped, because obviously you could have women who have then took other names and such. So his descendants, their descendants, might still be living, just under a different name. And then Harry makes a connection. Harry connects one of the memories with this Peveril talk. Marvolo Gaunt says he was descended from the Peverils. His ring is the horcrux that we know of, had the Peveril coat of arms on it. Well, what's the Peveril coat of arms? Hermione pegs him on this too. He's like, well, what is it? What's the design of the coat of arms? Because that matters. Yep. If it's the Hallows symbol, then we got problems. And if it's, whatever. But Harry thinks the stone in the ring is the resurrection stone. His mind starts racing like super, super fast. Harry assumes that Ignotus is now his ancestor specifically, and Albus had the cloak because he wanted to further examine it because he might have guessed that it might be the famous invisibility cloak of death.
Which I think is reasonable because we know Dumbledore really liked trying to figure all this stuff out.
Yeah, well, now we know even more so that Albus had interests in the Hallows at one point. So it makes sense that Albus would come across a cloak that makes the wearer completely invisible and be like, huh. Like, wait a second.
I should look into this.
Yeah, I should give this a really good look. And Harry ends up dislodging the snitch from his pouch as he searched for an old letter from Lily and Sirius, between Lily and Sirius. And Harry thinks the resurrection stone is inside the snitch. So he's making a lot of very quick connections. Those synapses are firing in his brain. And he's making a lot of assumptions very quickly.
That was one I just don't understand where he pulled that from. The resurrection stone inside the snitch.
Oh.
I was with him for most of, like, fitting things together.
Mm-hmm.
But then it did feel like to me when I was reading this, it's like, that to me was a jump.
It is a jump. I could see the jump, though. So he's thinking the ring, descendant of the Peverils, the stone would obviously be from the Peverils, horcrux. So Albus had it, destroyed it, and then there's something in this snitch. What could possibly fit in this snitch that would be useful to Harry? Well, the stone from the ring could fit in this thing, because the ring was relatively small. So this could be it. And so I get the jump.
It.
It's a jump. I agree with you. It's a jump.
It kind of, the writing style in this section of where he's making all of these connections really reminded me of Felix Felicius.
Oh, yeah.
Where it's this, just everything feels like it's coming together in his brain.
Yeah.
Which I don't feel like we see often in this series, where he's this keyed into something.
Yeah.
But there was something when I was reading it that it stuck out to me, as this reminds me of when he was letting Felix guide him through things, where it was just...
Things just seem to fall in line for him. Yeah.
Yeah. Because so often we just watch him struggle through everything.
Or, like, make obvious wrong decisions, and then he stumbles his way into the ultimately right answer somehow.
Yes.
But
this feels a lot more put together.
I am somewhat kidding. I am more of a defender of Harry. I think he does make a lot of correct connections more often than other members of our podcast might. But, this one seems particularly targeted. And he's not done. He comes to the realization that Voldy is after the Elder Wand. Like, that's the wand he's chasing. To Ron and Hermione, this is a leap. Everything he's saying is leap after leap after leap.
They're not with him on anything at this point.
They're like, what are you talking about?
They didn't get it still in the beginning when he was talking about it. They're far from where he is. They have to think he's off his rocker right now.
Yeah, so I feel like this realization that Voldy is after the Elder Wand, I think this is a super easy, logical decision to come to, because we know he's been obsessed with a wand for a long time, and now he's very clearly searching for something, and he's trying to talk to people. So, this seems like he's talking to wand makers, but then he starts, like, he realizes he's left Ron and Hermione behind, and he's now like, okay, I'm gonna forget all of this. Where can I go next? How does Voldy even know about these? Because we know he was an orphanage, we know he wasn't around the magical world until he got to Hogwarts, so he, very much like Harry, would have no idea about the tales of the Beetle of the Bard.
Yeah.
And furthermore, Voldy doesn't strike me as the kind of guy that reads children's fairy tales and is like, yeah, this is my jam. So, like, how...
Are you sure?
Okay, that's fair. I can't 100% know that Voldy wasn't up at night reading children's fairy tales. You're right. Making that assumption. But
Voldemort just sitting there with, like, green eggs and ham.
like an old school, like, Rapunzel.
Would be great.
It would be great.
Disney classics.
Where Harry ends up with this is he knows Voldy didn't know about them. Because if he did know earlier on, then the idea that he possibly made a Hallow into a horcrux, like, clearly he didn't know that it was a Hallow, and clearly he didn't recognize the potential symbol on it. He probably also thought it was just a family crest of sorts and waved it away.
Yeah.
So that's, to him, definitive proof, which I gotta say that's a compelling piece of evidence. Like, okay, if he thought he was in the possession of a Hallow, he would have kept it and not made it a horcrux. But anyway. So, Harry ends up coming to the conclusion, Voldy is just chasing a powerful wand, not the wand. Hermione is like, what are we discussing? She's very, very doubtful about Harry's connections. And if this was something Dumbledore would have wanted, he would have told you about them. And Harry, out of nowhere, comes up with another really solid counter. No, he wouldn't have, because it's about the quest. You have to find out about these yourself, and then go about them. You have to search for them. So Ron, however, jumps in and agrees with Hermione and says, hey, these leaps that you're making seem a bit out there. I don't know if I can get behind all of these assumptions.
Which, it kills me that is the argument that Hermione is using of, oh, this is important, he would have told you. Because look at the past 6 books. Like, dude doesn't tell you when things... I like Dumbledore. I will defend Dumbledore. I know that that's not necessarily the popular opinion on this podcast, but I will defend him. He does not have a great history of telling you important, pertinent information. So really, this is the thing that you're going to use to poke a hole in it? The dude who hasn't told you anything and actively ignored you 2 books ago?
Yeah, that's fair. No, that's totally fair. But the idea that Ron agrees, Hermione's like, great, case closed, done.
I thought that was funny.
And
she's like, I'm not giving anyone room here.
Harry's just left standing there like, I feel like I presented a pretty solid argument here.
I do feel really bad for Harry in this.
It's tough. I'm trying to put myself in Hermione and Ron's shoes as he's going through all this, and it does seem like a crazy person. I mean, the way he's going about this, just rattling all this stuff off, you're like, what are we doing? Like, what are we even discussing? Like, can we just understand the gravity? Like, the most powerful dark wizard ever is hunting magic, like, mythical magic items to make himself the master of death. Like, what are we talking about?
Yeah.
But, alas, their debate ends, and we will end part 1 of this chapter. So, we will take a break, enjoy the break sound, and we will be right back with part 2. Before we get to our break sound, I'd like to acknowledge our friend Andy, who helps us produce our intros and our break sounds. If you want to hear more of Andy's work and like Formula One racing, check out the Outlap F1 podcast. It's your one-stop shop for Formula One news, insights, race previews, and reviews. You can find them wherever you listen to podcasts, and they even have a YouTube page. So check out Andy, Cody, John, James, and Deanna, and join them on the Outlap.
Love, exciting and new.
Hello, Hannah Waddingham here. Have you seen the fabulous new Sun Princess? World-class entertainment, exceptional dining, and the greatest pizza ever.
It's a love.
Don't miss our Come Aboard sale with up to 40% off and free room upgrades. Visit princess.com or call your travel advisor to book. Princess Cruises. Terms and restrictions apply. Offer ends 2/28/25. Ships at Bermudan and British Registry.
Dobby has no master. Dobby is a free elf.
All right, so we are back with part 2 of chapter 22, The Deathly Hallows. And as we come back into this part of the discussion, Harry's thoughts dwell on the Hallows, Voldy's pursuit of the wand, and how limited Hermione's thinking is. And Jenn and I were discussing that a little bit in the break of the idea that Hermione is this hyper-intelligent individual who's known for thinking on her feet and being quick with an answer, whether it's from a book or whatever else. And we started off this chapter with, wow, she was so good with that quick thinking of getting them out of the Lovegood house and making sure that Ron was safe and making sure that Xenophilius was safe. And she's so good at it. And there's not many times when we can say Hermione might be a bit flawed, especially in an academic sense. However,
I just, of all of the arguments to make, I'm just really, really stuck on how she's just so close-minded with this.
Yeah. But it's now interesting that Harry's like, oh, man, I wish she would just open up a little bit. But we get a week passing, and they're still bouncing through the countryside as Harry dwells on these thoughts of Hallows. So much so that one might describe him as obsessed with them, as he started to lose interest in the conversation surrounding the horcruxes, which makes Hermione not happy. Harry also notes that his connection to Voldy seems damaged, a little bit blurry. And Harry even worries, like, oh man, I kind of want to see where Voldy's at, because if he's pursuing the Elder Wand, I kind of want to know where the Elder Wand is. So we get further mention that weeks have now crept on. Now multiple weeks have crept on. And in Harry's listlessness, Ron has begun to take charge, and his inherent Gryffindor leadership
give him that.
has erupted from Ron. And his constant refrain is 3 horcruxes left. Where can they be? Orphanage, Diagon Alley, Hogwarts, the Riddle House, Borgin and Burke's, Albania, which as a traveler I would love to see them travel to Albania. That would be wonderful. In fairness to Ron here, it has to be all on the table. I mean, you have to really put it all out there, and just like Hermione needs to be open to every possible avenue, they need to probably start eliminating these, and at least how I would do it.
I think Ron is making some decent arguments here of we have to start somewhere, we have to do something, even if it's running through things that are improbable, let's just do it. Because sometimes you could also find yourself in a situation where this isn't very probable, but then you see something or you think of something that could spur you on to... So doing something, getting out there, I think, is a good play by him. Yeah.
I find it interesting, however, that Harry, instead of being engaged with these Horcrux conversations and strategy sessions and all of that, he's more focused on the fact that he would rather see into Voldy's mind and know where Voldy is at. Here's my problem with this, and I'm going to go on a little bit of a mini rant here.
Okay.
As much as I just gave Harry some credit for being able to make some connections on things that others might not be able to see and generally be right about a lot of them, I'm about to be negative on Harry. Harry, you're telling me that instead of you tracking down the history and you looking into potential history of the Elder Wand, and instead of you searching out things, your goal, your plan of attack for this Elder Wand is to just spy on Voldy as he actually does all of the legwork to go get this Elder Wand. That's your plan.
I like it.
You're copying his homework, essentially.
He's letting him do all the work.
Except that if he does all the work, he's most likely going to be the person that gets there first.
Yeah.
So you're taking a back seat to this whole search by only doing the search through Voldy.
It's not the most flawless plan.
It's quite flawed. I'm like, Harry, what are you thinking is the end game here? Like, oh, I'm satisfied with just looking into Voldy's thoughts as he grabs the Elder Wand, and then I see him grab the Elder Wand. Great, now you know he has the Elder Wand instead of you going and doing the research behind it. I'm like, this is your plan of attack?
Maybe he's hoping for some, last minute, he sees Voldemort's doing the thing, and then suddenly he's able to, swoop in and stop it. It makes no sense. I don't understand. I don't get it. It is kind of surprising, because he is very... He was, prior to this obsession, very much go-getter.
Yeah.
And then this obsession has just
I think part of it...
over.
I get that Hermione and Ron being very dismissive of the Hallows makes him realize, the idea of me being able to go and find this thing is probably not feasible.
Yeah.
I understand that, but still, you're not even engaging with your friends who are trying to solve real problems that you do have to... Because let's be real. Even if you have the Hallows, to officially end Voldy, you're going to have to get rid of the Horcruxes anyway, right?
Yeah.
So, we'll pose this question. Let's pose this question here for you. Knowing that the Hallows, if you have all 3, make one the Master of Death and essentially invincible.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing that you have to eliminate all of the Horcruxes in order to end Voldy's horrific reign on the Wizarding World, which would you put your priorities behind? Hallows or horcruxes?
I would put it behind horcruxes. You have to do it anyway. It's the Hallows could be helpful in accomplishing that. You could make an argument that it's important to go over the Hallows just to prevent Voldemort from getting the Hallows, which would be
two good arguments,
the closest that I would go to picking Hallows over horcruxes. But I mean, you've destroyed a bunch of horcruxes without...
Keep in mind, Harry thinks he has 2.
Yeah, so
already.
just go for the horcruxes.
He thinks he has the stone and the snitch.
Yeah.
He's pretty confident he has the cloak.
Yes.
So he's just waiting on the Elder Wand, which, by the way, he's very wand insecure at the moment. So
maybe that's playing into it. Maybe this is a subconscious desire by Harry because he feels part of him is missing to make up for that, to overcome what he's perceiving as his current weakness.
I can definitely see him being hyper-focused on this because it's something that's really grinding on him.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have my wand. Voldy was also wand insecure. He's trying to find a better option. I should be trying to find a better option.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that. You made a good argument for the Horcruxes in that I kind of have to get rid of them. And you also made good arguments for the Hallows in that they were the arguments that I was going to make.
I will argue against myself.
Yeah. Well, it's the same argument that I was going to make. So the Hallows make you essentially unbeatable. That would help in your hunt of Horcruxes.
Yeah.
And obviously making sure that Voldy is not in possession of any of the 3 of them would inherently help you because you have them, he doesn't. So, I mean, those are 2 really good arguments for the Hallows.
I don't know what... I honestly, though, I don't know what you give an edge to.
You have no lead to go on with the Elder Wand outside of the history that you already know of where the trail went cold and the insight that Voldy is giving you as to what direction he's gone.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can maybe analyze what path Voldy has taken and try to beat him there.
That feels like wasted energy.
It's risky.
Yeah.
So, whereas Horcruxes, he doesn't know anything about you going after them, so that's maybe your advantage there. Yeah. Hallows versus Horcruxes. Where would you go? Which direction would you guys go after? I think that would be an interesting poll.
That would be a
an
great
interesting
poll.
question for you guys to answer. So let us know which you would go after, the Hallows or the Horcruxes. We, however, are now entering the month of March.
Woo, it's March.
And Ron has finally found Potterwatch.
Yay!
Oh, before we get to Potterwatch, I gotta ask.
Yeah.
Since we're now into March, we've been camping for a long time.
Yes.
Jen, I have to ask you the question.
Mm-hmm.
How do you view the camping in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows?
Okay, so it's not as bad as I remember.
Okay.
And I do think that the movies made it more painful than how it's presented in the book, because at least we're having some pretty good arguments and kind of just better looks into how everyone is feeling or what they're thinking, whereas the movie was just kind of a slog, in my opinion. At the same time, I'm good if we just cut it.
Okay.
There's still a lot of it.
So you're coming off a little indifferent, I would say?
Yes.
Not super negative, not super positive.
I'm not happy about it still, but it's just not... I mean, it's a pretty low bar. It's just not as miserable as I thought it was going to be.
I feel like we haven't spent a chapter just talking about them in a tent. It's usually been surrounding some other activity. If it was just a chapter of literally, we're in a tent, figuring out 20 pages of just them doing tent activities, that would be a problem.
That would hurt.
Yeah, that would be a problem to me.
That would be painful.
But I don't think that's what we've gotten.
No.
So I don't think it's that bad, personally.
I would agree with you on that.
But you know what makes an extended stay in a tent a lot more bearable?
What?
Potterwatch. And Ron has finally found Potterwatch. The password, Albus. So we get this Potterwatch episode, And there's a couple of different layers to it. First, we note that Lee Jordan is the host of the Potterwatch. And he has special guests, Royal and Romulus. Royal ends up being Kingsley, and Romulus ends up being Lupin.
I wonder how they got those names.
Yeah, right? It doesn't fit either of them at all in any way, shape, or form.
No, not at all.
Lee Jordan is River. That's his code name. So
that one of all of them made me groan.
So obviously these are R-related nicknames.
Yeah.
What would I'm throwing this at you completely blind. What would your Potterwatch name be?
It would be Red Hawk for you.
I can go with Red Hawk, for sure.
It would be Red Hawk.
Yeah. For those not in the know, that was my high school mascot, so that would be an easy one for me. Which would yours be?
I would be Remix.
Why would you pick Remix?
Because when we worked at Cold Stone, you always said that I was superior at making birthday cake remixes.
I feel like if I was the Lee Jordan here, I would have definitely picked out a Cold Stone name for you. I would just...
Thank you.
Yeah, I would have definitely just put that on you without you actually having any kind of input.
Yes, I can totally see that.
So, I think that fits for both of us.
I like them.
It's okay.
They're pretty solid.
We should challenge the rest of the podcast to come up with their own.
I was just thinking that.
So we've clearly taken 2, so they can't have those 2.
Yes.
Those 2 are off the board. I'm excited to see what the others come up with.
I feel like Julie could be redhead, but that's too on the nose.
That is very much on the nose, but that could count.
I mean, Romulus. That's not any worse
Well,
than
that's
Romulus.
fair. That's fair.
But
We get the host, Lee Jordan. We get the special guests, Kingsley and Lupin. And then, the trio's so excited to just hear Lee that they get taken down a notch because the first segment in Potterwatch is the In Memoriam section where they announce those that have perished, unfortunately. And they start off with some pretty big names. Ted Tonks and Dirk Cresswell have been murdered, along with a goblin that seemed to be in their company. Dean Thomas and a second goblin, however, known to be traveling with them, seem to have escaped.
that's encouraging.
That is encouraging that Dean is at least okay, but that's sad to hear that Nymphadora's father has passed.
Yes.
Yeah, that's tough to hear. So, obviously, we heard back with their discussions about Harry Potter, about how, if Harry Potter really was the answer, he wouldn't be running, he'd be out there fighting and leading from the front. And then I think it was Ted Tonks who literally said, well, if he is running, then we should all be hopeful to be as successful as him at it, because he hasn't been caught yet.
Yeah.
And apparently they have been caught. So, sad news about Ted Tonks and Dirk Cresswell. And they're not done, unfortunately. A Muggle family of 5 in Gadley had been found dead, and the Muggle authorities have labeled it a gas leak. However, people in the know, in the wizarding world, have pegged it as the killing curse. That's pretty dark, that a family of 5 was murdered.
Yes.
I would like to know more about who the family of 5 was and why they were particularly targeted, if they were of some significance, or known to the wizarding world in some way, or if this was just truly a random act of violence.
I took it as it just being a random act of violence, which I honestly think makes it worse.
They also announced that Bathilda Bagshot's remains have been discovered in Godric's Hollow. Not surprising, considering the amount of damage that was done to the Bagshot house. They move on to Kingsley's report, and Kingsley reports that Muggles are ignorant to the source of their suffering. However, witches and wizards have been risking their lives to save their Muggle friends. And then he comes up with this great quote that I think is relevant into the story that we're covering, as well as the world today. Every human life is worth the same and worth saving.
Aw. I do like that.
It's a great sentiment by Kingsley. And Lee follows his report up with, I would vote for you for Minister of Magic if we all survive all of this. You'd have my vote. I'm a big Kingsley guy.
I do really like Kingsley.
I really like Kingsley. So.
Yeah. No, I think that's totally fair.
We move on to the next segment, which is Pals of Potter, which I feel like is a super upbeat topic for the person who's doing the segment.
I really feel like this broadcast is just kind of all over the place.
A little bit, yeah. So we get Pals of Potter by Remus Lupin. And he starts off Pals of Potter by stating, Harry Potter is still alive. Kind of an important detail if you're doing Pals of Potter. But he goes on to say some pretty poignant things. Lupin says that Harry is a symbol of everything they're fighting for. Triumph of good, power of innocence, and the need to keep resisting. We're all with him. Follow his instincts, which are good and nearly always right. At this point, Harry glances side-eye at Hermione, who retorts with, nearly.
I love
You're
that exchange.
Nearly always right.
I love that exchange so much.
Obviously, there's a lot of gratitude from Harry, because the last time he interacted with Lupin, it did not go well. They had quite the argument, and Harry feels quite a bit of emotion towards Lupin, who's been able to put that aside, because there's this thing going on called a wizarding war, and there's more things going on than just a petty side argument. So Lupin's able to put that away and get the message out that no, Harry's everything. And the only gripe I have about this, if you've been following the podcast, you know this has been a gripe of mine. But the idea that the Ministry wanted Harry Potter in their realm. And yes, part of it is probably just promotionally based to make it look like everything's fine and dandy. However, I'm just saying, hypothetically, because I know it's hypothetical, but hypothetically, if this was the message that the Ministry put out, Harry is a symbol for everything we're fighting for, triumph of good, power of innocence. Keep resisting. That's the message that the Ministry put out. Would you be okay with it?
Okay, so in terms of your question, here at face value, yes. That's the kind of message that the Ministry should be putting out, probably hoped to put out, could have been beneficial if they did put out. But that answer of mine also has some asterisks next to it, because that's not 100%. The context that you provided up to it is not 100% where I think the disagreement between us lay. See, I don't have a problem that Harry didn't help out the Ministry, because I think that for Harry that was the right choice, because he had no reason to actually trust the Ministry. So the caveat that I would put onto this answer of what your the question that you just asked me of, would that not have been good? It would have been good. That would have been a great message. 100% should have done it. Would have been great if it happened. All of that is with the assumption that Harry could have trusted the Ministry. So, I don't disagree that this would have been the way to do it, but I still don't agree that Harry should have gone with the Ministry. I think this works very well if Harry had that trust in the Ministry, which I do not think that he did, nor do I think he should have. So that's the part of it that I'm separated. That's my caveat to this, is at face value 100%, but we disagree on the other thing. We don't disagree on this message. We disagreed before.
Right. So I guess I would have hoped that Rufus and Harry could have come together and actually put up a plan similar to this. Granted, here, to your point about Harry trusting the Ministry, both entities are propping Harry up as it. Mm-hmm. You are it.
Yes.
The Ministry would have propped Harry up like a poster boy and been like, you are it. Mm-hmm. The Order of the Phoenix here is propping Harry up as a symbol for everything they're fighting for. He is it. Literally the poster child. So they're both doing the same thing. I think what a lot of people, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, is intent behind putting Harry up as a poster boy.
Yeah.
I think people view the Order as more genuine about it versus the Ministry maybe more, I don't want to say malicious behind it, because I truthfully, genuinely don't think they would have been malicious about it. But maybe a little disingenuous, maybe? Mm-hmm. Not malicious, but maybe a little disingenuous.
Yes.
Which is fair. I just wish they could have come together and made it work.
I think, yes.
I guess.
I think it would have been great if they could have done that. I think that would have been the ideal outcome, that there was trust, that there wasn't that inherent concern of disingenuousness or anything like that. Not how it went.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was the ideal.
Yeah. Lupin continues on his report of imprisoned individuals, and there's only one name here, Xenophilius Lovegood.
I kind of saw that coming.
They are relieved to hear that he is just imprisoned and not one of the in memoriam members. Honestly, we joked about Luna being in Azkaban. I can't see Xenophilius doing well.
No, Luna is a very different type of person.
I think, and we've talked about Xenophilius and how he looked in the Xenophilius Lovegood. This guy has been through a lot.
Yeah.
He's lost his wife, he's lost his partner, now he's lost his daughter. His business is getting squeezed, and now he's lost his house on top of it because it's blown up.
Yeah.
Granted, a little bit his own fault there, but still, that's a lot of loss. And man, you have all of that despair. That's a lot for Dementors to just drive home to you.
Yeah, he's not gonna have a good time.
His would be hard. I think his would be really hard because he doesn't have much to really focus on the good.
No.
So Xenophilius might have a rough time in Azkaban. Lupin continues on with the on-the-run individuals. Again, one name here. Rubeus Hagrid is now on the run. Why? He decided it was a good idea to host a Support Harry Potter party.
Idiot.
On the campus of Hogwarts.
Idiot.
Not the wisest thing to do.
Idiot.
Obviously, we have speculated that maybe teachers have helped Ginny and Neville and Luna when she was there get some access that they might not have been able to get on their own, and one of those individuals might have been Hagrid. And, we also kind of rolled our eyes at the idea of, they're getting in trouble by being sent into the Forbidden Forest with Hagrid. Well, that's not really a punishment.
Mm-hmm.
They go on to say that, while we applaud Rubeus for his support of Harry Potter, and we appreciate that, don't do this.
No.
Don't go about
Why would you do this?
Shouting your support for Harry Potter. It is not a safe thing to do.
From a self-preservation perspective, it's a terrible idea, but also from a strategic perspective, it's a terrible idea. You do so much more harm than good by doing something like this when they need people on the inside. He is on the inside at Hogwarts. Stop doing dumb things.
I think part of Hagrid's bravado in doing this comes from the idea that he's a half giant and he has smaller giant in his back pocket, essentially. So he feels maybe, okay, Caros, come at me. But that's, if we're continuing with the theme of narrow-minded, it's a little small-minded.
It's not thinking of the big picture.
Yes. They thank Hagrid for his support, but also, please don't do that. And then we get another segment of this episode, and we get the Chief Death Eater update. And this is given by Rodent/Rapier. Which one are you going to go with, Rodent or Rapier? Not you personally,
Right, of the two?
Are you going to name this one Rodent or Rapier? Which?
I would name him Rapier.
Yeah, you're going to go with it?
I'm nice.
They also have trouble determining if this is actually Fred or George.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. but it's one of the twins.
I think they settle on Fred, right?
They settle on Fred. But yeah, probably hard to tell. So, rodent/rapier Fred/George then get into the update on Voldy himself. Voldy is in the shadows, which naturally incites panic amongst everybody. And they quickly mention, like, you know what wouldn't be helpful? By just saying he's everywhere. He can't, not even he can be everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So don't start spouting rumors that are just made up. Like, we need to have a decent idea of where he's actually at. Don't spread panic.
Yeah, that's fair.
They do estimate that he is abroad. So they naturally assume he's on holiday. Because, he's had a lot of work. He's been busy.
You gotta relax.
He's gotta take a holiday.
Look, killing people is hard work.
It really is. The killing, the torture, that gets monotonous after a while. You
Takes
need a break.
toll.
Yeah. So he's on holiday. But they also acknowledge that don't take the fact that he's maybe abroad for granted. Voldy can move faster than Snape confronted with shampoo. Which is just brilliant.
I love that.
It's so good. And yes, it makes the trio laugh hard. But I'm sure the Death Eaters have figured out a way. I'm sure Voldy has someone sitting there with a radio, tapping it, naming order. Like, I'm sure someone somewhere in the Death Eater circle is listening to this.
Yeah.
And if it is Snape, I'm sure he's like, guys, I use shampoo. I use a certain brand. It's this. Yeah. Why can't they ever get this right? Or it's one of the other Death Eaters being like, ha, yeah, got him good. Yeah. You know what I mean?
I like the image of the Death Eaters even just laughing at this.
Hey man, it's a funny joke. And I'm sure
it is. It's good.
I'm sure the Death Eaters make those jokes about Snape all the time. Because Snape's not the most popular guy.
No.
So.
Also, he does need new shampoo. It's not working for him.
Yeah. He's just probably just going for that, like literally... There's how is pomade still a thing?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Like that greasy oil, like you literally slick back your hair,
like 1950s, greaser. Yeah,
like maybe he's just rocking that.
Maybe
and it's was his look. I don't know. I still have the issues on wizard maintenance as a whole. Do they shower? Where are they showering? Do they take baths? Is there enough baths for them to take? This is the thing we never answered on Hogwarts Legacy, Jen. We don't see showers in that. We see a couple of baths if you get into the prefect's bathroom.
Do only the prefects or bathe?
Maybe. But you know what I'm saying? You don't see it. Do they just gurgify or whatever, and use your wand to soap up and what do you do there?
I would love to have that ability.
Wouldn't it? It'd be insane.
That'd be amazing. Just do my hair.
Do they vanish all of the dirt and all of the sweat and all of that stuff off? Do they just vanish it off? These are the wizard grooming techniques that we need to know. You have done a really good job of documenting the nooks and crannies of the wizarding world of Harry Potter in Orlando. I think you need, next time you go, because I know your next trip to Orlando cannot be that far around the corner. You need to go and you need to be a research correspondent.
Okay.
We need to give you a microphone that you can just go around and asking people the in-depth questions of the Harry Potter wizarding world. That could be a segment.
That would be a fun segment.
Keep an eye out for us next time one of us is in Orlando, because between me, you, Elizabeth, and Julie, somebody will probably be there. So keep an eye out for that. They end the Potterwatch broadcast by saying that the next password will be Mad Eye.
Aww.
And they're not sure when the next broadcast will be. They got to find another safe location. They got to make sure it's all safe and whatever. So they just keep trying us. The next password will be Mad Eye. We'll figure it out. Keep each other safe. Keep faith. And they end the broadcast, which I also feel is a great way to end the broadcast. Keep each other safe. Keep faith.
It's very sweet.
Obviously, the trio begins excitedly discussing the broadcast. And doing so, Harry slips and uses Voldy's name. They have been found.
Dun dun dun.
And that's how we end the chapter.
That's a nail-biter of an ending.
Oh, extremely. I remember reading this the first time through, and my reaction was I couldn't turn the page fast enough
Yep.
to figure out what is going on. Yeah, it's a super exciting way to end it. Do you blame Harry for letting the name slip?
Yeah, I think he's an idiot.
Wow, okay, just hard. He's been using this name since he was, like, in his first year. Dumbledore told him to, like, he's gotten in a habit.
You're on the run with the threat of death looming over your head. I would be the slowest talker on the planet.
Yes, but you got excited here. You got, like, in the moment, you revert back to an old habit. You can't tell me that you've never done something where you're like, oh, I hate when I do this, but then you just get, excited, and then you fall back into an old habit. You slip.
I just think he's an idiot. I don't think
he's human.
It's not a mistake that you can
afford to make.
Yes.
Yeah. I know.
And that's why I'm so harsh on it, because it's not like it's, he makes this mistake and something small happens. It's you're putting not only your life but the lives of your two best friends on the line. I think you should maybe rein it in.
That's fair. I get it. I'll give you this. Voldemort's name is not exactly easy to say.
That's what
in that, like, literally it takes a while to get the whole thing out.
Yes.
Like, if I was saying, like, oh man, I can't believe what Jenn said. Like, Jenn is, boom, that's quick. Like, that can happen quick, and that could be an accident.
Yes.
And that could be like, oh no. Voldemort. Like, when he starts saying, oh, I can't believe you don't believe Vol, and then, like, Ron trips in like, no!
Yeah.
You could be like, I can't believe you think Vol, and you're like, oh, I can't say that.
Yeah.
You might be able to catch yourself because it's such a long name.
Yeah.
Maybe. It's still hard.
Call him Voley. Call him Morty.
Okay, I will give you that. It would be really if they found a different code word for it. But still, even if it got a code word, it's still habit for you for years.
Yeah, but it's 3 syllables. Still. Voldemort. It's still... You can still stop yourself.
It's still a multisyllabic word.
Yes.
I get you. I get it. Like, you're not wrong. It's just...
I'm just hard on him because I just think he's being an idiot.
Well, do you think Harry's an idiot? Let us know by commenting on any of our socials, which you can find us on Instagram, Blue Sky. You can comment on Spotify, YouTube. You can comment on YouTube as well. You can find most of our socials at Hogwarts Pod. And participate in those polls that are also on Spotify. Those help us let us know what you guys think of the episode and what's going on in the Harry Potter books. And we really find it all extraordinarily interesting, more than you probably can possibly imagine. But it's super interesting to read your thoughts and read the poll results. So please let us know. We've obviously talked about a lot of interesting things. So stay tuned. We'll be back next week with a massive chapter, Malfoy Manor.
You could call him Oldie. You could call him Voldy. You could call him Moldy. You could call him Moldy, Voldy, Oldie.
I love that that's what we're ending the podcast on. I hope you enjoyed that ending. We will be back next week. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for listening to Hogwarts, a podcast. If you like what you've heard, please click the subscribe button on your preferred podcasting app and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Hogwarts a Pod.